Hello everyone, welcome to the live Q&A with me, Professor Michael Scott. It is the 5th of August. How time is flying, and I hope you guys have all been really well, enjoying the kind of summer weather we've been having. In the UK, it's been some incredibly hot weeks and some less hot weeks. In fact, today it doesn't look like at all like an August day. It's raining hard where I am in Oxford. So hope you are enjoying some better weather wherever you are in the world. Hope the last couple of weeks have been kind to you, and thank you as ever for tuning in to this live Q&A about all things ancient and the ancient world. So before we kick off with your great questions that have been coming in over the last 2 weeks, of course, we must first do Prize Week. So for those of you who don't know what Prize Week is, every couple of months or so, we look back at the questions that I've been able to answer with you live during the Q&As, and we pick what we think is the best question that's come up in order for that person to win a prize. Yes, indeedy. And so I've been looking back through the last couple of Q&As that we have done, going through all the questions, amazing questions from all of you that we've been able to answer. And we have come up with a winner. Yes, and it was very difficult this time. Been some great questions, but this one I think really kind of got me thinking. I think it got all of you thinking as well. So this question was from Memo Muller back kind of in the end of June when we were doing a Q&A, and it's: did the ancient Greeks and later on the ancient Romans ever stumble across fossils of dinosaurs and prehistoric animals? What were their thoughts about them? So that is the winning question for the August prize. Congratulations to Memo Muller. What you need to do is get in touch with us via the Facebook page. You can email us also, michaelscottacademic@gmail.com, or get in touch via the Facebook page. Let us know your address and what prize you would like. You can have a copy of my book Ancient Worlds signed. Let us know what kind of dedication you would like written in it, or if you'd like to give something to a younger audience, then a copy of my book of the Key Stage 2-3 about the ancient Greeks is available as well. So let us know what you would like, let us know where to send it, and we will get that on the way to you. So congratulations once again to Memo for that great question about what did the ancient Greeks and Romans think about dinosaur bones and fossils. Particularly was thinking about this because earlier this week with my 5-year-old I was in the Natural History Museum here in Oxford looking at all the excellent dinosaur skeletons, and my personal favourite, the meteorite rock that they have there, which is 4.5 billion years old, makes the ancient Greeks and Romans look extraordinarily modern. This rock, 4.5 billion years old, came from the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, and is as old as the Earth itself. How's about that? So get down to your local museum in one form or another. I'm thinking about taking up even more ancient history than we're used to here on this Q&A, but Memo Muller, thank you very much indeed for your question, and congrats. Okay, so that is the August prize. Brilliant, thank you all. And obviously we have been having some other great new questions that have been coming in. So we're going to kick off with a question from Nassim Akhtar asking, I was just wondering if many people in antiquity were short-sighted and how they rectified it. Have we become more visually challenged over the centuries? Now, this is a really great question. Thank you very much, Nassim, for this. Kind of what did they do about being particularly short-sighted, myopic in the dim, distant past, and how did that work? So I was doing a little bit of research around this, and it turns out that most kind of studies or scientific studies of eye issues, eye problems, particularly thinking about long-sightedness and short-sightedness, they attribute the sort of first known observance, particularly of short-sightedness, to the ancient Greeks. Of course, the ancient Greeks were there all the way along. And so they attract that first reference to Aristotle in particular, and he is credited around about the middle of the 4th century BCE. He's accredited with the first time coming up with the word, or using the word, myopic, in order to, and that comes from sort of, it's muops. It's a kind of combination of muain, which is kind of to close, and of course ops, the eye, and it's his observation that there were people who had particularly sort of bulging, protruding eyes and then would squint, what we would call squinting, so that kind of closing of the eyes to try to be able to read things further afield. And that, and particularly the observation that in some cases could help a little bit. And it took a long time after that to try and work out why it is that sort of myopic people, particularly squinting, kind of actually helps squeezing the eyelids actually helps a little bit with improving the vision. And I say this as a short-sighted person myself. I remember squinting at the blackboard at school before I realised that I needed glasses, and then kind of finally getting glasses and going, my God, this is amazing, the world has changed. And then since 13, 14, I have been a dedicated contact lens wearer, although I've never ever gone as far as to having the laser eye surgery, but it kind of that scares me actually a little bit. I probably shouldn't say that, should I? Will feel that, but there we go. Kind of sometimes things are a bit irrational. So Aristotle, kind of really interesting, making this observation about myopia. And then there's a question of what do they do about it? Because obviously in the ancient world, they're not going to be creating special lenses to be able to respond to myopia. In fact, the type of lens, if I understand this correctly from the research, the type of lens that you need to be able to correct myopia, so short-sightedness, a kind of concave, I think it is. Please, a scientist out there, tell me if I've got wrong here. Convex, concave lens wasn't invented. We're looking kind of much later into 15th century and onwards before such options were available. And it might well have been something to do with the fact that myopic people, short-sighted people, wasn't actually seen as something necessarily you needed to correct, because there were roles for short-sighted people who could do good, close, detailed work, particularly in craftsmanship and artisanal work. And we know from later periods, so thinking much more towards the medieval period and later medieval period, that people who were short-sightedness, particularly who could do the fine, detailed brushstrokes of manuscripts, for instance, and focus that kind of close-quartered, very, very detailed work, were actually kind of well respected and maintained and sort of asked to kind of try to almost improve their myopia, if that's an idea, for them to be able to work even stronger and better in that field. So it may have been that there wasn't just the need to even sort of think about correcting it, let alone thinking about what they would have been able to do to correct it before the ability to be able to fashion glass into a particular kind of lens that was needed. So there we go. What an absolutely brilliant question from Nassim. Thank you very much indeed for your question about short-sightedness. So we think they recognised it. In fact, Aristotle is kind of credited with being the first person to observe it. They also had some interesting ideas about why it happened, and this was all caught up with actually ancient concepts of how we saw things. And there's very different models from the ancient past about as to whether or not actually it's the objects in the world, as we know it today, that are being reflected off with sunlight and then sending that vision towards us, that our eye and the back of our eye is reading. Actually, in the ancient world, there were a lot of ideas and thoughts, and these perpetuated for centuries, that the eye was sending out beams of light, fire, whatever it might be, that was actually then bouncing off things and coming back to help us perceive. So it's all caught up with kind of actually ideas of how we see in antiquity, as much as then what one can do to correct that. So Nassim, thank you so much indeed for your question. Absolutely brilliant. We're going to move over to Latifa Walker, who's asked a question about pilgrimages. What kind of pilgrimages did the ancient Greeks and Romans make? Are there any pilgrimages that you would like to take? So I like this question very much indeed. Are there any pilgrimages that you out there, tell us now, would like to take anywhere in the world, places that are special for one reason or another to you? So the question about pilgrimages is really, really interesting, really important. And yes, we do now talk quite a lot about pilgrimages in relation to the ancient Greeks and Romans. Now, pilgrimage obviously has a very religious connotation, something that kind of one almost has to do as part of one's following of a particular religion. And so the word is not simply meaning a journey to a sacred site, but actually an idea in that journey and that travel to that sacred site and worship at that sacred site is somehow a fundamental part of being a believer in that religion and continuing to complete and carry out your religious duties as a member and as a worshipper of that religion. So pilgrimage is definitely used, and some of you in the messages already, Delphi as an obvious example, absolutely. We talk about pilgrimages to Delphi, but also to many other sanctuary sites around the world. And of course, in the ancient Greek and Roman world, particular sanctuaries, often had particular roles, dependent on the god or goddess they were dedicated to, which were particularly relevant at particular stages of life for particular people. So we have to think in the ancient world of pilgrimages that come into relevance for certain people at certain times in their lives. Leanne says she'd just be glad to be going anywhere at the moment. I think we would do, I quite agree, we definitely would do, even if it was just for any good reason, let alone a religious pilgrimage. And pilgrimages can also have elements of things that need to be done on the way, or particular routes that need to be followed in order to complete the pilgrimage. So we have examples of those from the ancient world as well. William Moulton, really interesting question. So would going to the Olympic Games be considered a pilgrimage? If we relate it to sort of modern religious ideas of pilgrimage, can you be a worshipper of the ancient Greek gods, for instance, if you have not completed the pilgrimage to Olympia at least once in your life? Right? That would be a really interesting question to ask and think through. Would you be considered to have fulfilled your vows to the gods and your duty to the gods if you had not done so? And of course, on top of that, individual people in the ancient Greek world made specific offers and to the gods that they would do certain things for the gods if the gods helped them achieve certain things, and oftentimes that included a journey to a particular sanctuary of that god to worship there and offer a dedication there. Tracy's talking about the theoria. There we go, that's the Greek term that we want to be thinking about, that idea of kind of traveling but also seeing at the root of that word. You have to go there to be able to experience it and to take part. Greek religion in particular is not necessarily a religion of belief in antiquity. It's really interesting. There is no word to believe, in terms of believing in the gods. There's no word for religion in the in the ancient Greek world. Most famously, you showed that you did Greek religion by doing it, by acting it out, by actually making the journeys, making the sacrifices, making the dedications. So that aspect of actually doing, of performing, is really, really, really important to showing that you are a paid up member of the ancient Greek world. So Latifa, really interesting. Thank you so much for that. Different kind of pilgrimages. And again, that question of, are there any pilgrimages you out there would like to take? It would be great to hear your answers either now live or indeed to the Facebook page, and we can have a think about the different places that we would like to make pilgrimages to for all sorts of reasons. They don't need to be for necessarily religious worship. Fiona is talking about the need to pilgrimage to Italy, Greece, China. Today we can use that word in a much more secular way as well, can't we? That idea of pilgrimage to see and see for ourselves and experience, and in some ways offer our esteem, and could we even use the word worship, certain amazing sites, certain amazing natural locations, certain amazing pieces of art and architecture. So I think both that context could also be applied back to the ancient world in some ways, because we know that ancient Greeks, for example, did make journeys to sanctuaries, particularly the rich and the wonderful sanctuaries like Delphi that was full of amazing stuff to see, particularly to see things, right? To actually kind of see and understand them. Samantha would like to do the Camino, absolutely, as a journey with meaning rather than any religious significance. Brilliant, Samantha. Linda would like to go on a pilgrimage to Amman, absolutely. This sounds brilliant. The kind of great ideas, I think once the world opens up, let's all get out there and get going with them. Absolutely, absolutely love it. Thank you so much. So Latifa, thanks very much indeed for your question. Let's take a quick break for a moment to have a think about some of the stuff that's been in the news. Stefanos, you're going to climb Mount Olympus next year. Wanting to do it for years now. Wow, I'm jealous about that. That sounds absolutely absolutely brilliant. If only, are you taking friends and other, esteemed classics colleagues to come with you? That would be absolutely brilliant. Elizabeth likes to go to Norway. Latifa wants to go to Istanbul. Dawn, you hello. Mariam, I'd like to go to Sicily. Absolutely. This is brilliant. Lots of great questions indeed, and great answers and great ideas about where to go. So thank you all. In the news, what have we been finding? So HS2 doesn't get a lot of good press, but a storm most recently has helped uncover some amazing archaeology that's along the HS2 route. It's a hoard of rare Iron Age coins that have been discovered on a dig on the HS2 route in West London. And they were found near Hillingdon. And it was a storm that actually washed away a lot of mud and helped to reveal their position. Absolutely brilliant. Archaeologists have dated them to the 1st century BC. So this is a really interesting time when the Romans are starting to establish themselves in Britain, thinking about Julius Caesar coming over, but also pre that, trading patterns establishing with particularly Gauls. We were talking about a little bit a week or two ago. Stephanos, have a fantastic time going up Mount Olympus with your sons. What an amazing experience to do together as a family. Wonderful, wonderful. Please send us some pictures. Please send us some pictures while you're up there on Mount Olympus. And Fiona's, could you go sneak into Mount Athos? Yes, I think you might get tucked out pretty quickly from there, but it's a good idea. I would love to go to Sinai, to go to the monastery in the Sinai. That would be absolutely fantastic, and see that as well. What else have we got here? From physics.org, Cyprus showcases ancient undersea harbour that's going to draw in the tourists, apparently. Now, we've noticed this, haven't we? Starting in Italy, down at Baia, now they're in Greece as well, and now over in Cyprus, there are these underwater archaeological parks or excavation sites that one can go and visit as a tourist. And here is a new one in Cyprus. What they have discovered is a harbour on Cyprus's southern coast, which seems to have been built by Demetrius the Besieger. Now, he's a really interesting character who is sits as a ruler of Athens for a little bit of time. But anyway, he seems to have built this harbour in Cyprus, and it's just a few feet under the water, 200 feet off the coastline, near the resort town of Limassol. And it's going to be a new tourist attraction. Adventurous holiday makers can snorkel over its submerged stone remains. Absolutely brilliant. So when you're next in Cyprus, make sure that you check out the new underwater archaeological zone to have a look at. And then thinking about underwater, in the Venetian Lagoon. So over in Italy, in Venice, the Venetian Lagoon, they have discovered a remains of a Roman road and dock submerged in the Venetian Lagoon. Now, this is absolutely fascinating because obviously we did in Invisible Cities Venice some years ago, and we looked at the very origins of Venice. And one of the stories that's traditionally told is that Roman era settlements are all on the mainland. They're not in the lagoon. But as invading hordes come down from the north and the tribes push through as the Roman Empire disintegrates into east and west, those people in those on-land settlements get pushed further and further into the lagoon for self-protection from the invading hordes coming down from the north. And that is the beginning of the settlement of the Venetian Lagoon. But this Roman road could turn that story upside down. So scuba divers discovered what appeared to be paving stones beneath the lagoon in the 1980s, right? But it's actually only after more recent research that the relics were confirmed to have formed part of a road system. So this is a discovery that was 40 years ago, but actually now we've only just really realised the enormity of it in terms of what it could tell us about how the lagoon was used prior to the disintegration of the Roman Empire. So I think this is absolutely brilliant. I'm very excited to hear more about this. And again, underwater, there's a clear underwater theme going on today, isn't it? From The Guardian, we have ancient Roman ships laden with wine jars have been discovered off Sicily. Can't think of anything more appropriate to have been discovered off Sicily than an ancient Roman vessel from the 2nd century BCE. And it's been discovered in 92 meters of water, so very, very deep. And they've taken a submarine robot down there to find that this ship was carrying a copious cargo of wine amphorae. Absolutely brilliant. And then many of you have been talking about this, and we've been talking about this a little on Twitter, and I've been involved with this through the charity Classics for All that I act for as a trustee. Of course, the government in this last week or so has announced a new pilot programme to reintroduce Latin into 40 state schools over the next 4 years, with a budget attached to be able to do so to GCSE level, as a sort of pilot project about putting Latin as a language on par with modern languages that one could learn in schools. Now, obviously, Classics for All, the charity, has been working for the last 10 years, in fact, to do exactly this and to help train teachers to be able to teach Latin and other classics-related subjects like classical civilization and ancient history, and indeed, more recently, ancient Greek, to be able to offer this at different levels in state schools across the country. And we're very proud at Warwick to be running the Warwick Classics Network, which is a Classics for All hub, the West Midlands hub, where we're working with schools across the region to help introduce classics. So this is a welcome kind of step in from the government to be able to support this initiative, and we're looking for Classics for All, and other organisations around the country are looking forward to working with the government on it. So great news all round. Let's now kind of absolutely make this a stonking success, so that eventually they realise that every school in the country should be able to offer some Latin and the study of the ancient world to those who want it at their school. That's the goal of Classics for All. That's what we're all aiming for. Make sure that everyone has the opportunity to study this wonderful, wacky world if they so want to do. Now, just a quick flag of a couple of podcasts that might interest you. They've been all flagged, of course, on the Facebook page, but things that particularly caught my eye. I've got a Sparta theme this week. So History Hit has got a great podcast with Stephen Hodkinson on life in Sparta. But then also The Rest is History with Tom Holland and Dominic have also been looking at the Spartan world as well. So you can kind of have your dose of Sparta. And if that's not enough Sparta for you, then of course, do go and have a look at the series of You're Dead to Me that we did. Oh God, it was the first ever recorded episode, although it came out later in the first series of You're Dead to Me with Greg Jenner that I did as well with him talking about the Spartans. We were having a good giggle about the Spartans there. So you can get your fix of Spartans one way or another. But the other History Hit podcast I want to flag to you is about the Begram Hoard. Now this is absolutely extraordinary treasure hoard that's actually kind of found, well, it's in modern day Afghanistan, but it's a treasure hoard relating to the tribes and empires and communities that were ruling there in the sort of first to sort of second, third centuries CE. And what this treasure hoard demonstrates is an extraordinary set of influences from both West and East, from China in the East, from the Mediterranean in the West, all coming together in the objects that these communities sitting in Central Asia chose to have with them, and indeed in turn brought to this kind of treasure together. So do kind of tune in to have a look at the Begram Hoard. Absolute eye-opener. And it's the University of Freiburg's Lauren Morris who takes us through the different beautiful objects that blow you away from the fineness of the creation as well, as much as where the different influences for them come from. Okay, have we got time for a question? Absolutely. Thank you so much for your questions, your thoughts that have been coming up about the teaching of Latin in state schools. Absolutely brilliant. Yes, indeed. Kind of all really important. And the most important thing, so this is not something that we're kind of forcing down people's throats in any way, shape or form. This is something that we want people to have the opportunity to study if they so desire and to enjoy it. So kind of this is what the ultimate goal for us all should be. Right, we've got a question from Sarah Scotty, who's just finished Laura Bates' Men Who Hate Women. She makes the point that many white supremacists use the idea of the classical age as a way to justify their toxic creed. I'd like to know the thoughts on the issue. Sarah, thank you for your question. Lovely to hear from you. And yeah, you're absolutely right. This is a massive issue and problem that needs to be tackled in all sorts of ways, and also sort of bleeds into another whole series of issues that is confronting classics at the moment. Particularly in America, we do see radical misunderstandings of the ancient world being used to support modern xenophobic, homophobic and racist and particularly white supremacist ideologies. And if you go to the Pharos Project website, Pharos, Pharos. That's actually been set up in America to document these misuses of the ancient world, and of misunderstandings, misinterpretations of the evidence from the ancient world, then actually look at what the evidence really does say and try and help course correct. So it's really worth having a look at that website. It's interesting, I think, to note how so often that language of the ancient world gets involved in protests and riots, and indeed kind of when we look at the storming of the Capitol that happened in the dying days of the Trump administration, and when you look at what some of the protesters and rioters and those who stormed the building were wearing and the posters that they had, oftentimes there were classical allusions in them. So, for instance, there was a postage sign, very famous photo that came up with a big sign which said, Trump, time to cross the Rubicon. And I'm thinking about this idea of Julius Caesar crossing the Rubicon, breaking the oath that no one should cross the Rubicon with an army walking into Rome, and trying to incite Trump to do the same. Caitlin's just asked for that website again. It's pharos.org, Pharos. So if you Google the Pharos Project, you'll find the website, and you can have a look at some of the things that they've been documenting. So we definitely see this, particularly in America, but that's not to say that it doesn't happen indeed in other countries around the world. It's quite interesting that in China, actually almost the reverse is true, that ancient Rome is the model that is used by dissidents who want to critique the Chinese regime. They call it an ancient Roman empire with emperors that are trying to rule, but actually China in no way, shape or form is interested in that rhetoric. What China wants is much more an association with ancient Greece, and particularly with its philosophical and cultural achievements. It wants ancient China and ancient Greece from a point of view of philosophy and culture to be compared, not modern day China and ancient Rome. But then there is a bigger question afoot about not necessarily where classics is being misused to support modern ideologies, but actually where the study of classics for one reason or another is caught up in what we would now define as very out of time and out of mode ideologies. One of the most obvious is colonialism, right? So for one reason or another, particularly in the way that the classics were taught and how people who then went on to run, found, support, justify colonial creation, imperial creation in the more recent past, have used the classics and been informed by the classics and how the way we've looked at the ancient world through that lens as well. There is a whole job to be done of pulling apart what is the ancient world and what is the study of the ancient world, and how our modern preoccupations have got kind of mixed up between the two. So there's a really interesting job here, and it would be very worth having a listen to Catherine Harlow, who's the incoming director of the Institute of Classical Studies in London. She recently did a Radio 4 program called Detoxifying the Classics. And there is a group and there is an argument, again led in the US, says that actually there's a radical restructuring, rethinking, and almost burning down of the classics that needs to be done if it's going to be a subject which can actually loosen itself from the shackles of the ways in which it has been studied in the past, in order to be a subject that is useful and appropriate for us to continue studying in the future. So there's lots to think about here, both in terms of how classics are being misused, but also about what we need to change about the way we study classics going forward in order to keep it a useful and important subject for us in the future. So Sarah, thank you so much for your question. Indeed, that's absolutely brilliant. We didn't get a chance to, but we were almost running out of time. But Debbie Clifton has asked, what's your take on Nero? The new exhibition at the British Museum shows him in a sympathetic light. Debbie, I completely agree with you. I think this exhibition is brilliant, and if you do get a chance to go to see Nero in a different light. Now, Nero is one of those characters who has suffered from history. Remember, he was only age 16 was when he became the Emperor of Rome, and he was dead by the age of 30. I mean, imagine a 16-year-old having to rule the Roman Empire. He was aged 23 when the Boudiccan rebellion happened that he had to respond to and deal with here in Britain. He was aged 26 when the Great Fire of Rome took hold. And The problem for us about Nero is that nearly everything we know about him is written by later historians, particularly Tacitus, Suetonius, Cassius Dio, who all are writing in the next period of emperors, the Flavian emperors, who wanted to distinguish themselves from Nero and the end of the Julio-Claudians, and as a result don't want to paint a very good picture of him at all. So no wonder Nero has suffered as a result. So he suffered sort of when he died with this idea of damnatio memoriae, everything of his was sort of taken away, suffered because he didn't have the people talking and writing about him at the time, but equally also suffered because later historians decided to dump on him pretty strongly. Okay, enjoy everyone. We are going to meet next time on Wednesday the 25th of August at 5 p.m. Wednesday the 25th of August, not a Thursday. We need to change it up a little bit. Wednesday the 25th of August, 5 p.m. Look forward to seeing you all then. And in the meantime, stay safe. Have a wonderful next couple of weeks. And I look forward to seeing you then. Keep those questions coming in to michaelscottacademic@gmail.com or via the Facebook page. Take care and see you all soon. Bye.